Hi, welcome to another IG Live where this is going to be my office hours, and I'm going to talk a little bit about pricing today. We'll see how long this lasts because I'm hiding in my son's bedroom right now, hence the bananas behind me. So I asked a question yesterday in my stories about how often do people, it was a poll, how often do people quote on a job and have a client come back and say that was too high. And I was really impressed that 84% of people said that they often have a client come back and say your price is too high. And that made me happy for a number of reasons. The first time someone asked me that question, I was in my maybe mid-20s, maybe late 20s, and I realized I had never had a client come back to me and say my price was too high. I was working with this marketing company doing some design work for a client of theirs, and this guy was giving me a bunch of advice, and when he said, how often do your clients come back and say that price is too high, I looked at him like he had just opened the door to some magical universe, and I said, never, I've never said that. So if in fact people are coming back and saying your prices are too high, that doesn't necessarily mean your prices are too high. It means you are at least asking for enough money. I was really depressed to learn that I had not been doing that. Someone brought up a really interesting topic, which is that it was someone who was talking about, I think, video editing or video production in general. And as a creative service like that becomes so much more accessible to everyday people, and I mean with the designers less so, with things like Canva and stuff like that, you're competing not just with people in your industry, but people that aren't even really in your industry, people that don't have the same amount of training, the same amount of expertise. And so it can be really challenging to convince a client that they should hire you over someone else, or that your work has a value that needs to be measured differently. So that can be really challenging. It bummed me out to hear that people were having a hard time with something like that. So I do think that the phrase, I could get someone to do it for less, is definitely something that I'm assuming, of the 84% of us that said people have told us our price is too high, at least some client has come back and said that. Another big thing that people responded and said was that they assume that their prices are too high, but it's mostly just that they've been ghosted by clients. And I see this a lot, and on really big projects too, which always surprises me. And particularly working with an agent, when I had an agent, a lot of times ad agencies will triple bid on jobs. So anything that came through an ad agency then went to my agent. So it's, someone down the line is not coming back and telling you that this job that you were really excited about, that you put together a quote for, is in fact not happening, or they went with someone else. So I think that if you do have access to a client and you aren't necessarily going through an agency, and you've quoted on something and never heard back, I think in an effort to, maybe this isn't someone that you want to do a lot more work with if they aren't doing you that courtesy of following up, but maybe it is. I think that if you can follow up with a client and just say, hey, I was really excited about this job. I understand you've chosen to go in a different direction. Just for my own understanding, can you tell me a little bit about why you chose someone else over me? And I've only done this a very small handful of times, and it's been really interesting. The answers that I've gotten, it's been really interesting. It's been really good to also, I feel like, continue a dialogue with this client. Even if they aren't able to hire you for this job, maybe you want them to consider you for another job later down the line. And so it's just nice to know that even when they haven't chosen you, that they know that you harbor no ill will, that you aren't frustrated with them, or just to know that you are still just as actively interested and capable as you were before. And this is also a great way to find out whether or not it in fact is the number, which is the reason, because it's definitely my default, and it sounds like it is for some of you as well, to assume that if someone doesn't come back to you on a job, it's because they got someone to do it for less. But it's also quite possible that could have been a timing issue. The entire job could have gotten scrapped. If it's through an ad agency and you had a creative director coming to you, maybe they might still want to do that direction, but the client might have decided that the entire direction that you were being hired to produce is not on their radar anymore. And it's understandable that these people are very busy and, now they're scrambling to get together a whole new project. So, try not to take it personal that they haven't followed up with you. I think I'm going to do another one next time where I talk a little bit more about the factors that I put into how I determine a quote for a job, and maybe a little bit more about how that can be best communicated to a client, whether it's literally or just through the structure of the way something is quoted. But I think that's maybe a little too much for me to do today. My son is playing in the other room. I'm at home. So I think I'm going to duck out early on this one. But I just wanted to share the results that I got, and just the idea that it can help continue your client relationships, to go ahead and follow up if a client has ghosted you and ask if it really was the number. Oh, one other thing is that I also make it very clear if in fact I am flexible. I make it very clear when I send the quote, this is what I would typically charge for this job. Let me know if this works within your budget. So they understand this is what value you're placing on the work. And then there is a little bit more of a discussion that can happen then. So hopefully there would be less ghosting, and someone could come back and say, look, I would love to hire you for this. I understand that that's what it's worth, but our budget is, a third of that. And that is very helpful. If you are triple bidding on something, you can say, I would love the opportunity to match any other quote that you get, which is kind of aggressive, but a thing. Anyway, I hope some of these tips were helpful. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and DM me. I would love to incorporate things that I know are going to be useful for people. And if you're interested in hearing more about client red flags and how to handle them, I have a class on Teachable now. It's at dirtybandits.teachable.com. And it's called how to spot red flags and avoid or manage nightmare clients. Anyway, I will see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.